We know that in this industry, there has been a skilled trades and a skilled labor gap for a long time. People are leaving our industry faster than they're entering into it, and that is just as true with Windy City Equipment as it is for every other skilled trade out there. This whole sector of the skilled trades is so important. How can we have a growing industry but a dying profession? My hope is that I can breathe life back into this profession for everybody in it, including myself, my friends, my colleagues, my employees, and my family.
In 1983, I was getting ready to move to California, and my godfather, who was the smartest man I've ever known, said, "You should be a technician." And I said, "You're crazy." He said, "Just hear me out. No matter what the country's doing, recessions, doesn't matter. People are always need to keep their house cold, their food cold, cooking, that type of thing." I said, "Okay, you're crazy. Peace out." And I moved to California. So that's how it truly was always in the back of my head. I was in the film industry from 83 to 94. One of my good friends had a repair company. He offered me a job, and we built a bakery, and the bakery actually hired me on as their chief engineer was the title, but I was uneducated formally, but I can fix things. So I worked at the bakery, worked there until 2003. I was working 100 hours a week on salary, no days off. It was brutal. So I knew I needed more, wanted more. So I went back to school for my certifications. Very first day of class, instructor said, if anybody has any idea of having their own company, I suggest Arizona or Nevada. They're dying for good service people. Light bulb came down on me and just shining bright. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start a company. I was married at the time. I called my wife. I said, you want to move somewhere warm, pick a place? She said, Arizona. We came out that weekend, bought a house. I didn't start the company right away. I went to work for another company, and it was brutal. They paid what's called ticket time. Everything I did was following up from one of the other guys, so it was never billable, so I couldn't make any money. But I would talk to everybody, and I knew a guy, and he said, can you fix my oven? I said, I can. I made more money fixing his oven on that one day than I had in the last 2 weeks working. So I called my wife. I said, I'm quitting my job tomorrow. She said, what are we gonna do? I said, I'm gonna start a company. I was out knocking on doors every day. My wife was knocking on doors when our younger son was in school. I met a guy who owned a five-and diner, who grew up in the same hometown back in Illinois. And he said, can you fix my griddle? I said, yeah. And I wasn't even sure how to charge. I mean, that type of thing. So took it apart, said, oh, this is easy. Put it all back together, fixed it, and gave him a bill. It was, $50. Next thing you know, he calls all the five-and diners out here and says, if you're not using Windy City, you're crazy. I started doing all the five-and diners, which wasn't much. My first year in business, I made $11,000. And yeah, we were living on credit cards because we still had to pay the mortgage, we still had to pay the car payments, still had to pay everything else, groceries, whatnot. By the time it was all said and done, it was just under $100,000 in credit card debt. Yeah, but I just worked harder. Failure is not an option. It never was. So even with me working as much as I did, and my marriage was starting to suffer from it because I was always working, always on call, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And one of her comments to me was, you said if we didn't like it, we could move. And I said, no. I said, if it didn't work out, we can move back home. I said, but failure was never an option. So that was just not in the cards. Josh had moved to California to work in the film industry. I remember we would go out to visit him, and it would just tear me up because, he was just this skinny thing. He was piss poor broke, and he wouldn't call me for help, and you could tell he was starving, but he had to do what he had to do. I remember in 2000, I believe it was 2008, when he called and said, I want to move to Arizona. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I was hoping to work with you.
How did I get here? I suppose if we're going as far back as we can, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I was the kid in high school that would go move rocks for the neighbors for a small fee. lot of people know what I did before Windy City, which was in the film industry, in the stunt business. Rolling cars, jumping off buildings, getting lit on fire, all the normal stuff that regular people do. But all through that calling was not in the stunt industry. It was in entrepreneurship. What clicked for me was I was actually doing a commercial for Alltel Wireless. My role was I had to throw my arms down and say, hey, how could this day get any worse? And I was on the sidelines of a football field, and right then and there in that moment I got pummeled by a football player. This dude was like 250 pounds, every bit of it. I didn't have any pads or anything like that, you know? So this was the business, this was the stunt business, and this was my job. We did that take over and over again, probably 15 times. I just got hit. Oh, no, we need another one. Let's do it again. Hit. Oh, we knew another one. Let's do it again. I saw the commercial air, and I realized that they used the very first take. And at that point, I realized that in that business, I'd never be more than a crash dummy, right? A stand-in for somebody who they deemed more important than me. And that didn't resonate with me. In that moment, that's when I knew that I had to do it. It's just now it was time to actually do it. I called him up and I said, Dad, I have no idea what you do for a living, but I know that there's some kind of an opportunity in it, and I want to come help you build it. You know, I don't want you turning wrenches your entire life. I think that we can do something special, you know, with what you started. And at the time, it was just him. I mean, literally, you know, on his business cards, it said service technician, and he was the only one running service. I came into the business and he taught me everything that he knew about being a service technician, and that's how and where I started. No handouts, no riding coattails, none of that. You know, my dad's an old school guy, and I took the old school path. When I took the reins as CEO of Windy City, honestly, I had been waiting for that. I felt like I had so much more in me, which, to be fair, my dad had held me back from that position for a while because I wasn't ready to take it on yet. And that's fair because he was absolutely right. But, you know, by the time I did take the reins, I was ready. And I had one mission, and that was to grow the shit out of the company. Don't get me wrong, okay? This isn't just like a magic, hey, you know, it worked overnight. It certainly didn't. But the goal was to grow it into a powerhouse and really contribute to the success of the people around us. Yeah, man, I was scared shitless. In this industry in particular, in every industry, but this industry in particular, you never feel like you know it all, I don't think. And if you do, there's no more room for growth. I've always been a very motivated person, and I never wavered from what my idea of success is, and that's just to lay my head on the pillow at night and feel accomplished, right? I always thought that if I could do that every single day of my life, that I would end up somewhere worth being. And I am, and I continue to be.